hopefully they'll find the place. Congratulations for finding it. And so in a couple minutes, I think we have feedback here. So this is good, we're testing Wallace. I'm hearing myself.
Yeah, it's from here.
Okay, all right, I think that's better. Yeah, so in a couple minutes, we're going to begin showing a PowerPoint. Those of you who have been here before on Zoom know that we do this as the Zoomers zoom in. And so, so you'll see that, and you might hear the music also. But feel free to continue talking, because it won't disturb anything. And we have desserts and coffee and all of that over there. Please feel free anytime during the program to get up and enjoy that. You know, we want to be sure that you have a good time. Okay, any questions? Okay, so we'll begin at 2 o'clock with the actual program, and this PowerPoint will be showing shortly. I just don't want you to think you're missing something. All right, see you in a bit. Maybe I'll go over here. No, I'll stay there. So good afternoon. Good afternoon and welcome to those of you who are here with us in person. We have a nice crowd of people enjoying their desserts and their book. And I also want to welcome those who are on Zoom. Many of you are still coming in, and we'll admit you as quickly as we can. So my name is Sister Kathleen Duffy, and as president of the American Teilhard Association, and also the director of the Institute for Religion and Science here at Chestnut Hill College, I am pleased to welcome you to this afternoon's program. And I would especially like to extend a warm welcome to those who are joining us for the first time. How many here are joining the Institute or the Teilhard? Wonderful, that's great. So spread the news. We're going to be trying to do more of these in-person things. People are still, affected by COVID and would rather stay home. So we're hoping we can have more fun together. So the American Teilhard Association was established in 1967 to expand knowledge of the cosmic vision of Teilhard de Chardin, to encourage critical study of his work, and to apply Teilhard's thought as we examine humanity's place in the cosmos, as well as our responsibility for directing the development of an evolving world. I encourage you to become a member of our organization. We'll have the website on the chat eventually, but for those who are here in person, there are flyers, membership flyers, so feel free to pick one up.
I'll get out of your way completely, and I'm going to go into the living room.
Somebody's talking. Okay. So the flyers are back there on the book table near the door. Well, it's not near the door now, it's in the back of the room. Also, there are books back there, a couple of my books and Amy's book. If you want an extra copy of Amy's book, those of you who are here have gotten a free copy. But if you want an extra copy, please feel free to purchase that back there. And there's some Teilhard studies. And we can accept cash, check, or Venmo. So whichever works for you is fine. And Sister Mary, small.
We can't hear. We can't hear.
So they can't hear, and I can hear them. Are they working on it? Okay. So, okay. Sorry. I thought it would go smoothly, but oh well. We're doing it, it's always more complicated with a hybrid. So then the Institute for Religion and Science at Chestnut Hill College was founded in 2011 to pursue further study of the connections between science and religion, but also to encourage civil dialogue. Over the years, we've sponsored more than 60 major lectures, a couple of conferences, as well as an ongoing reading circle. Some of you were there in the old days when we were over at Sugarloaf. And you can find more information on our website. Actually, it's on the Chestnut Hill College website. So if you go to Chestnut Hill College, chc.edu, and search for institutes, you'll be able to find it. We'll be holding another event in this room not next Sunday, but next month on October 26th. The topic is the Chinese practice of Qigong, with Rachel Katz, an expert in the field. Rachel spent 25 years in China learning the details, so if it's something you'd be interested in. And she does a lovely job at teaching the movements and all of that. So spread the word. And she'll not only teach us the basics of the practice, but also provide information about the health effects connected to the practice. So it's not just about doing it, but to seeing how it really can encourage us. This afternoon, after a brief introduction to our speaker, Amy Edelstein will share with us something about her latest book, about how it came to be, and particularly the method she used. Amy's presentation will be active with time for sharing and time for questions and comments. So we encourage those on Zoom to stay tuned. There might be some quiet time, but you'll be given an assignment, something to do to continue to interact. So for those on Zoom, when it comes times to questions and answers, you will need to use the chat. So I hope you all know how to do that. By now, most of us know how. So Patrick McCauley, professor in religious studies here at Chestnut Hill College, will be forwarding your comments and questions to Dr. Edelstein, and she might be picking them up herself, and I will be feeding those things from the floor to her. And so we will be sure to have everybody in the act. And so now it's my great pleasure to present today's speaker, Dr. Amy Edelstein. As a Cornell University College scholar, Amy studied cultural development, education, and Western and Eastern schools of thought, and spent 4 years immersed in intensive meditation practice. For the last 40 years, Amy has been working with the tools of mindfulness and systems theory, studying with leaders in the field and teaching around the world. In 2014, she established the nonprofit Inner Strength Foundation, which has helped more than 30,000 high school students in Philadelphia's under-resourced public schools to realize their higher potential. And in 2019, she received a Philadelphia Social Innovation Award for her work. The author of 8 books, among them The Conscious Classroom, which received an IPPY Award for Excellence in Educational Theory, Adventure in Zanskar, her memoir, and The Conscious Classroom, a book about the philosophical underpinnings of her work with mindfulness in the Philadelphia schools. She's co-founder of Emergence Education Press, which publishes books that have the power to transform. You can listen to her podcast, The Conscious Classroom, and visit her websites. I'm sure if you Google her, you'll get the links. Amy is a dedicated contemplative practitioner, a passionate thinker about how to support our higher human capacities to build a better world, very much like Teilhard. So she's right in the field with him. After reading Amy's latest book, Zest for Life, which you have, those of you who are here have received a copy, I was determined to have her join us for this special event. So without further ado, please welcome Amy Edelstein to the American Teilhard Association and to the Institute for Religion and Science. Amy. Wonderful. Just be careful of all those cords.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone in person and online. I'll try to talk to both audiences. And for those online, please forgive me if I seem to neglect you. And during the question and answer and during some of our reflective time, we'll have time to engage with you too. So I am thrilled to be here, and I really want to extend a warm welcome to everyone. This is going to be participatory. I think when we have the opportunity to spend an afternoon with a visionary like Teilhard, to do him and his work justice, we need to immerse ourselves. We need to allow ourselves to connect with the heart of what he was bringing forth, to connect with that source of prophetic vision, and to connect with that heartfelt aspiration to make this a better world. So let's take a moment. You all also have, those of you who are here, hopefully you brought a journal to write in. If not, we have some loose leaf paper. We have some writing implements here at home. Make sure you have something to write on. And as we begin, allow yourself to just drop in to yourself for a moment. Not what you're going to learn, not what I'm going to say, not who you're going to meet, not where you just came from. And allow yourself to connect with your deepest and highest intention. What do you care most about in your heart of hearts? What do you long to see in this world? From where does your gratitude spring? And as we connect with that, let's also connect with our own joy and love for this opportunity to gather together, to meet new friends, to allow ourselves to let go of the barriers to speaking from, hearing from, and seeing from that deepest part of our heart. As we do that, I think we enact and rectify a challenge that Teilhard felt during his life. So we can allow ourselves to make that whole, where we can speak and be freely connected to the divine, however we find that. Thank you. So, the essence of what I want to talk about is, what does it mean to live in a divine milieu? What does it mean to live in a sacred container in a world that's constantly becoming? And we're going to talk about Teilhard's amazing vision for that and how he was able to stay true to a God that is perfect and whole and infinite in love and grace, and recognize that the work in the world is still in a process of becoming, is still not yet finished. And it's our work to help move that divinity on earth forward, even as grace and sanctity moves it forward for us. So that's in essence what I want to do. And I also feel that in these times, allowing ourselves to create that space where we're not pushing against the harshness that is ever more present in the world is it's a really important and somewhat rebellious act, because we're not in avoidance of the world and its conflict and its suffering and the increasing harshness that is meeting more and more people who have less and less ability to fend off the difficulties. But by allowing ourselves to rejoice in a sacred container, we push that light out. So mostly it's private and inner, and we want that light to spread. So I do feel that it's an important act that we're doing. I first came across Teilhard's work in the later 1990s. I had been on a long spiritual path with my roots in Reconstructionist Judaism, and then spending a bunch of years in the early 80s in Asia, where I got exposed and did a lot of deep practice in Theravadan Buddhism, Tibetan Buddhism, and Vedanta. And then I lived kind of as a lay nun, a little bit similar, because I lived in a residential meditation center for 27 years. And we had centers, so it wasn't always in one place. The last 17 years was in one place. But the container around me was people who wanted to build a better world. And as part of that, we had a magazine. And I was researching for one of our issues on Can Enlightenment Save the World? And I was looking up some of the scientists who were looking at how evolutionary theory relates to the evolution of consciousness, and whether it does or not is a very interesting thing. I have a lot of questions about that. And in some of the essays in response to Teilhard, I do push back a little bit on whether we're always moving in one direction somewhere, but we'll get into those ideas. But I came across reference to his work from Lynn Margulis, who's a genius, and I just started reading and reading and reading, and I presented this to my editorial team, and I said, you know, I don't know where I've been. I must have had my head in the sand, but we need to, you know, do some features on this amazing person's work. And it took a little bit of convincing, because in the spiritual but not religious group, a Jesuit priest is not the first person you listen to. And I think that's unfortunate. And I think it shows some of our prejudices and our limitations, because the structures of religion have enabled amazing seers and saints to go deep. And structures, like any large structure, has done a lot of harm. And I'm not, you know, I understand that, and as part of the second wave of feminism, I definitely grew up with that. But we don't want to overlook what it takes to build a container in a secular society where you can do deep practice and deep engagement. And so where we can look to the religions to find those deeper seers and visionaries, especially in our times now, I think we might want to look with new eyes and look for the light that's there. So Teilhard is, as I'm sure, I've talked with many of you, and most of you seem to know him quite well, and I imagine for those of you who came through the American Teilhard Association, you probably maybe know more about his history than I do. But what I love about him and his vision and the work that inspired this, the book I wrote, is Zest for Life, is that he was living in times that were extraordinarily challenging. He was not just trying to mend the world piece by piece. You know, from his view as a medic in the bloodiest war in history of World War I, where it was still very much hand-to-hand combat, where it was grisly, it was gruesome, it was harsh, and it was very discouraging in Europe. America was somewhat shielded from that. But during that time, he started envisioning a way of understanding the world that people had not given voice to before. He, I think, maybe born out of the depths of the struggle, he felt compelled to open up to a sense of the possible that gave voice to all of the sacredness that led him to become a priest and to give his life to the church, and that looked beyond the limitation that was there. So I think in our day and age, this is really important. Many of us are trying to assess and push back and respond or criticize bit by bit by bit. It takes a lot more to go into those deep wells of the heart, to commune with the sacred, with the divine, and to allow a vision of what's possible to come forward. So that's why I love Teilhard, and I've read a lot of his work, and if you read Teilhard in translation, I don't speak French, so it might be better in French. I'm not exactly sure it's that easy in French. It's a little better. Okay. But in English, it's really hard to get your mind. Yeah. So I felt that he's a little bit inaccessible because of the language and the way the translation is. And I was always a writer of poetry. So I started during COVID reading his letters during wartime where he wrote back and forth with his cousin, his cousin was a student of Ingrid Bergson. So she was already into evolution, and she was really smart, and she was his sparring partner. And she gave him a sounding board where he could speak freely, and they wrote letters back and forth, and those letters are now published. Not many people read them, but I found them a little bit more accessible than the essays, which I'm sure he labored over, bit by bit, and tried to really philosophically and scientifically make his arguments. But in the letters, he was more free, and there's a little bit more of their back and forth, and there's a little bit more of her pushing back on him and him pushing back on her. Many of her letters didn't survive, but a few did, but you get the sense from his letters that what she was questioning, because she was very smart, and so she wasn't just going to take everything he said, especially when it came to evolution of our human consciousness and our divinity. So I started reading these letters, and I'm one of those people that really hates to mark up books. I try to make myself, because I can never find what I'm looking for, but I had like stickies all over the book, because you could at least take those off afterwards. And then I was looking at the passages that I marked, and I thought, these would be a lot easier to understand if there was some white space and some air around them. Because if you write poetry, you realize that the silence is as important as the words. So I researched and eventually found the person the publishing house that holds the copyright, and asked if I could get permission to do this and to publish these. So each of these poems are verbatim, including punctuation and italics, what's in the actual text. But when you look at them, you realize, oh, you might understand things a little bit differently. And then as I was doing that, I was having conversations with Teilhard in my head, and I was saying, well, I don't know if I agree with that. I don't know about that. Or, I really love that. We need to talk more about that. And that's where the essays came from that I wrote. So I would take a passage from these letters in wartime, I'd reformat it, and reformat it again, and reformat it again, and see how it landed differently depending on where the white space was. And then in working with it, I was having a conversation about my own understanding of the evolution of consciousness, my own understanding of what this meant. And the essays, I hope, will do two things. And one is to illustrate a point of the passage that you might not have considered, and that will invite you next time you're reading a spiritual, philosophical, or religious text to dialogue with it. That may be my background. So I had a father who was a professor of physics, and he was always asking me questions. And then, as I mentioned, I had a Jewish background, so everyone's always discussing. Not much silence, but a lot of talk. And that might be part of why I felt the need to engage and make it my own. And that was also why, when Sister Kathy and I talked about this day, I wanted this to be interactive. Because everyone needs to talk with our own sense of what our heart is responding to. It's not enough to just listen. We have to talk back, because it's in that talking back that you start to feel what you know and what you don't know. And in our contemporary times, we don't dialogue that deeply anymore. That's part of the work I do with high school kids in Philadelphia, is I teach them how to inquire. I teach them how to speak and listen so that we can think more deeply, so that every conversation or every reading of a text is a growth process. So usually we take in order to accumulate knowledge. But really, I think that engagement has more to do with opening up, letting go of ideas, making room, like I did with the poems, making space for some new intimations to come through. And I think that's what Teilhard had to have done. Because how do you go from being a stretcher bearer with the injured, with the dying, to sitting in churches and writing letters to your cousin about higher forms of harmony and integration as being the divine mandate? How do you get there? You have to make space. You have to make room for the possible. So in these times particularly, where a lot of us are feeling very discouraged, we want to make room with that blank space where we can have a dialogue back with ourselves, with our hearts, with our spiritual knowing, and see where we get to. I'm going to read, only because I promised to. I don't usually read, but I'd like to read a couple of these passages. And this one's a beautiful passage. It's called Trembling Before the Earth. Who can say what invincible power it is that sometimes makes us tremble before the earth or the sea or the huge past, as though we were close to a beautifying presence that still hides itself from us? And who will ever bring about the happy conjunction of this vague summons, so deeply felt in the heart of every human at all worthy of the name, and the call of a personal God? So it's Teilhard's reckoning with this closeness of God that feels so immediate and yet so hidden. To him, he takes that vast presence. And I learned a lot from him about this because of the way his faith manifests, about finding in that vast universal call a deeply personal divinity, one that is as if it's sitting right next to you. And I want to think, let me see. I was going to read my essay, but I'm going to read this essay instead. So this is another short poem. It's called this is Teilhard's words, of course. It's called The Extension of Evolution. The moralization and sanctification of the universe are the real progress, the real extension of the work which produced the brain and thought. And that, I feel, is very much our mandate. So the moralization of our world as we see so much fragmentation and a lack of moral responsibility, that, we're living in the age of AI. 10 years ago, we didn't talk to Siri. Now if Siri doesn't get the directions right, we yell at her, or him. I'm an Australian man, so as if it wasn't an amazing innovation. So we can evolve in many ways, but are we evolving our moral compass? Are we evolving our deeper sense? And that was Teilhard's felt impression of where we need to go. He's watching the evolution of matter. He's the paleontologist. He's digging. He's seeing, million-year-old fossils and saying we need to evolve our morality. So when I was wrestling with that and the injunction and the demand that it carries, what I wrote is, whatever force or current brought brain, thought, and human endeavor into being, that force continues, true to its divine purpose, as purification of view and of action. In the East, it's called enlightenment. That word in both secular and spiritual spheres in the West has been so misapplied. It conjures up a static goal of knowledge or social position, one held by those who claim to know and see. Enlightenment really is as fluid as spirit itself, never fixed, harsh, or certain in that two-dimensional way. It has to do with the essence of being, continually re-knowing itself in time and space, ever blossoming in beauty fully, ever opening to the light, ever creating greater and greater harmony within and without. Like the calm coolness of the moon or the soft fingers of dawn spreading over a field, our higher evolution is an endless flow towards goodness. That force which caused atoms to adhere, forming molecules, that caused molecules to adhere, forming organisms, that caused organisms to complexify and multiply, forming fantastical brain, our organ of perception. It is now calling us to take up the reins of our own journey of purification. Our directive at this point in time is to consciously work towards the moralization of the universe, to bring into will and intention that goodness which being expresses as an unself-conscious extension of itself. When a moral order becomes our natural expression, the impossible may become the actual, and life will begin truly anew. I want to give us some time for questions, so as you have questions or reactions or responses, we'll do that soon, and if you're on Zoom, you can put a Q in front of your question, so we know it's a question, not just a comment. The thing that I feel a lot from Teilhard, and I think that he grappled with it in a personal way, as the church wouldn't let him publish, as they took away his post teaching in Paris and sent him to China, which he loved researching and he loved being in the field. But he lived with that sense of separation from the home that he had made in the church. And I think that that pain of separation is one that we also live with in our secular world, where we live with that pain of not being at home, not being able to rest, not being able to come home, not in our house with our comforts and our pets or our families, not that type of home, but that home where our being can come to rest. And I think that paying attention to that sense of separation is part of this divinization of matter on earth. Paying attention to that sense that we are not at home because we're not aligned with being itself, with spirit itself. So that where we look to come home is not in organizing our environment better, but in taking those moments to create that blank space for home to reveal itself as the always present divinity that it is. And allowing that sense of the immediacy of home to also let us find a vision that is true for our time, that understands and unifies the science that we understand, as well as many wisdoms that we have left behind. Because in our industrial evolution, our technological evolution, we have forgotten how to talk to the animals, how to be with the sun and the moon, and how to take joy in the very fact of being alive. So if Teilhard's work can find its new rebirth right now, it's in that sense that understanding our path forward can actually arise from the suffering. His did, but not be part of it, not be embedded in it. So I think of him almost like, in his spirituality, almost like, if you have a trilobite, embedded in a rock, and you brush around and you brush around, and then you start to see its contours lifting up out of the rock, and you go, oh, amazing, this has been around for millions of years. I think that's in part what we're doing in the innermost recesses of our being, is we're allowing the contours of something that is both very ancient and yet is not yet manifest in the world to see the light of day. So with that, we will start taking our excavation brushes and our pens and pencils, and I'll take some questions, and then I'm going to give everyone an assignment, just like I do with the students in school. I never thought I'd be a school teacher, but there you go. I bring mindfulness and systems thinking into the high schools. So this is what I try to do with our young people, to get them to think in bigger ways. So any questions that you have, I'll take some in the room, and we are monitoring the Zoom. Yes, Joan, and I think I'm going to pass the mic to you just so the Zoom people can hear too.
Yes, I really appreciated how you led us into a mindfulness when we started. And my question is to you, as you speak about these ancient contours and the coming homeness and the pause, did you find Teilhard exploring this embodied faith in any of his letters to Marguerite or in any of his other writings, like the Divine Milieu?
In some of the things that I came across, he talks about prayer, and he talks about times of prayer, and I think I think he spent a lot of time in prayer himself. He writes less specifically about it, from my knowledge, but it's referenced, and he was he was true to his faith. So I'm sure if we had been able to sit down with him, he might have, and asked him directly, even though I think that's very private in that world. But yes, I think that contemplation and devotion, carried him and was a means of expression. I can only imagine so.
Someone else? Microphone over so you can keep yours. Anyone else have any questions or comments?
I was very impressed with your discussion of the ineffable but close presence of that which transcends. And I couldn't help thinking, I had a very influential Hebrew Bible professor who asked us to spend a lot of time thinking about what it meant for Moses to be encountering a burning bush that wasn't burning. And I wonder if what you're speaking about the closeness and yet inaccessibility or difficulty to access it, is being played out in the symbol of the burning, not burning bush.
It's beautiful. I hadn't thought about that, but yet that sense of paradox that is manifest. So in that passage, there's a burning bush yet was not consumed by its flames. And that to me evokes that sense of the impulse to bring the divine into the world, because that burning in the heart takes, it ignites. And once it ignites, it's very hard to put out again. Once you have that calling, it's very, very hard to snuff it out. No matter what happens in life, it's always going to come back to you. You're going to say, I know that fire. I forgot or I pretended that it wasn't there, but it doesn't consume in the same way. It doesn't consume like a match that becomes nothing. It consumes by becoming one with your life stream and that flow that keeps you alive, becomes your essence. So I think that the paradox of how do you have something burning that doesn't consume is part of our reckoning with God and matter. And yet it's also, it can be also our felt experience, that we are moved and motivated and drawn by something that feels so, especially in those moments of revelation, feels so intense that you're going to burn up, and yet you don't. And what it leaves is this light that is ever present. And that's what I think, in the Kabbalah, they talk about bringing the sparks of divinity to, you bring them into vision in the world. They're embedded in the world. They're covered up, but they're there. They didn't go out. So that's our call. Thank you.
Anyone else? Here I come. I'll bring them back.
Thank you.
From one Amy to another.
From one Amy to another. Not a question, just a reflection and appreciation, which is when you read the extension of evolution, these words, moralization and sanctification, often feel very limited to me. And they mean something specific and often exclusive. But to put that in the context of this fluid enlightenment just feels accessible and heals some perhaps apparent divides within worldviews or perceptions. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Amy. I grew up in the era of the moral majority. So morality has a very bad word to me, but I'm starting to use it more and more because it's actually not a bad word. It's just been attached to some things that didn't work out very well. So that was one, so with Teilhard, I would often wrestle because some of the language, came from another era. And that was one of them. But then I realized, no, because I talk a lot about secular ethics because I'm in public schools, so I don't talk about spirituality. And But then I realized there's nothing wrong with moralization because we want to be righteous, not self-righteous, but we want to walk with the righteous. That usually means walking with, those who are expressions of the divine in the world. So, yeah, thank you. Sister Kathy, here we go.
This is more a comment, sort of following on your comment about the moralization. In a different context, I recently read something about the purpose of morality is to, and I'm gonna garble this, but it's something along the lines of helping to order the world in a way to maximize the fulfillment of human potential. And this really resonates with that. And I'd never made that connection before, but it's given me something to think about.
Beautiful, thank you. Thank you. Do we have any on Zoom? Okay. No questions, no comments from our Zoomers.
Anybody else here?
All right, there's one more in the back there.
I just want to ask this question that it's at the edge of my ability to put into words, I think. I'll give it a try. I wonder if some of the challenge, I wonder if you have a thought about this challenge that we face to embody this moral order, such a lovely way to think about it. Perhaps related to this idea about kind of the primacy or the idea that we're sort of too human-centric. And I wonder if that idea about those lost intelligences and senses of knowing and being, like animal love and awareness of the moon and the kind of embrace, would look to reflect more a kind of divine sense of identity than just sort of the rigidity of our humanness alone. Does that feel like enough of a question?
Could you say a little more?
Well, you had this essay or reflection about the intoxication of individualism. It's in the book, and I think that this issue to have a deeper morality has to be related to, or kind of falling away from a deeper morality has to do with becoming intoxicated with our individual powers, our individual acquisitions, and our identity. And so our civilizations fight over only a piece of our experience instead of a kind of more higher recognition of some kind of divine reflection of who we could be. So I thought.
Yeah, I think that's beautifully put.
I was going to say even the larger picture of the universe, I think, is what you were trying to say, that we're so enclosed in our little worlds that we don't see the rest of the world, or the nature and all of that kind of thing. But go ahead. Why don't you? I'm not answering the question. I was just trying to.
No, that's great. Thank you.
A little bit, because
yeah.
I got what you meant the first time, actually.
Does anyone else have a thought? I have a thought. I have lots of thoughts. Yeah, so I think what you're saying is true. There's this infatuation with a limited self-sense, and that creates conflict. But I'd like to just approach it from a different way, which is what we started with, which is talking about the divine milieu. So if we're changing the context within which we interpret our experience, then everything changes. So if the context of my experience is limited to this outline of my body, it's going to be very small. And I'm always going to be trying to take up the glimpses of the infinite and take them into my limited context. It's never going to change anything, because fundamentally you can't really take the infinite and squeeze it into a finite life. And that tends to be where a lot of people who start on a religious or spiritual path get stuck, because there's a powerful experience of oneness, of divinity, of God, of awakening, of consciousness, of spirit, of good, whole and complete goodness. And there's the idea that now I take that and I hold on to it and I never forget it. You can't do that. It actually just doesn't work. And so what we hold on to is a memory or a limitation, and it becomes ossified. So if we switch, and so that the container of ourself is this infinite field, whether it's God or consciousness or spirit or whatever terminology you want to use, if that's our identification, then whatever arises in that will be informed by that. And that fundamentally deals with the separation and conflict. Because if there is only one divine milieu, there's no two to be in conflict with. And I think it's much better for us to think about shifting our frame of reference, because it always keeps us in the unknown, because we can't really grasp it. We have to let go. We have to surrender. And when we do, it's that blank space at the edge of a line, and it allows the vision of the poem to come through. Do you want to follow up?
One more thing?
Really helped me to understand that a little bit better, which I'm really so grateful for. What I realize is these locuses of science and religion and government, they have such a powerful hold over what we believe is true. And this idea about a sacred container to hold the divine milieu, I see kind of the opposition, not just as the locus of identity, but as you just described, as the authority that allows us to enter into a shared communal place of understanding.
That's great.
All right.
Move on, I'm just
Yeah.
noticing the time.
I know. So, oh, no, that's okay. There's a question, okay. Yeah, do you want to read it?
It says, this is from Teresa, love that, quote, change the context within which we interpret experience. I think it looks like Ian Gilchrist suggests that this is, what's that? That's right. Suggests that this is left-sided thinking, short-term utilization of self-will, necessary but limited. Right-side relationship, intuition, imagination, change the context, changes how we see. That's Teilhard.
Fantastic.
Yeah, thanks.
All right. So now that we've talked and engaged a little bit all together, and I think these were emailed to you, or we can put them in the chat. There are 4 different reflections that I came up with. And there are 2 sets of those on the table. Just flip through them. Choose one that you feel interested in. And then I'd like you to write, draw, reflect, meditate, and I'm going to give you about 10 minutes for the first one. So we're going to do a few. And then after 10 minutes, I want you to share with those that you're with. And those of you on Zoom, please share in the chat. So share which one you chose to write about. And then, if you're willing, please share what you wrote. Because once we write something, it's no longer ours in a certain way. I've been writing journals since I was 8 years old, and I used to be incredibly protective of my writing. And then I would go, I'd go back and I'd read something, I'd say, well, I wonder who wrote that. That's quite good. Oh, that was mine. So once we write something, it's not exactly ours anymore, so we can be free to share it and co-create. All right, we have some colored Teilhards on this table. Awesome. So if you're at home, please be creative. Don't feel limited, and don't worry about getting it right. And let's see, do the people on Zoom have copies of this? Okay. If you go to the PowerPoint, which I don't have here, and then let's see. That's Teilhard, that's lovely Teilhard. I'm terrible with, what am I supposed to point to? There we go. Okay, so here, the Zoom folks, I'm gonna give you one by one, so you all have to do the same ones, just because I didn't put them all on one page. It's, pick your own, and then you'll cross-pollinate. Yeah. There we go. And so Zoom folks, use this one. Everyone here has the same set of reflections, but in a different order on the table. And these are all related to contemplations from Teilhard. So when we go to share, I can also tell you what led me to these questions, because they were questions that came as I was contemplating some of Teilhard's work. And I felt that these were really the questions that either his life or his writings evoked. You can also feel free that if these questions don't speak to you, you can flip through the book and respond to one of Teilhard's quotes. So for those of you online, please share your writing or your impressions or what even having to do the writing evoked for you. And for those of us here, before we come back together and talk, give everyone, another 30 seconds to finish up and then share from what you're doing. I see some people busily writing and drawing, which is awesome. And as those people finish up, there was a quote that I had wanted to read that addresses two of the questions. And I think it's really interesting. And this is part of Teilhard's view that taught me a lot. And he said, because, with his faith, he looks for individual salvation through surrender and devotion. And he said the fundamental primacy of individual salvation leaves the soul all its fullness as far-reaching as the universe. So no separation between the individual and all that is. So that kind of answers, Daniel, your question. So great, go ahead and feel free to share those on Zoom if you have any questions, or if you want to share, we're gonna come all together after the tables or if you want to also share something with the entire group, you can raise your hand. You click the react button, that big heart at the bottom, and then you'll find a virtual hand that you can raise, and we can do that. So everyone here, feel free to share, and then we'll come all together for a minute. Okay. Should we try to do a lightning round of one more reflection, or do you want to keep talking? Okay, 2 more minutes, and then we're going to do a lightning round, which means a haiku, a limerick, something quick. So for one of the other reflections, but take 2 more minutes to finish your conversations, and then we'll shift.
I have moderate to severe flex.
Okay, let's do a quick lightning round because I have to leave Sister Kathy 5 minutes at the end to wrap us all up. So pick another possibility. You have 4 at your table, so one of the ones that you didn't choose, or maybe even either one of the ones that spoke to you, or even one of the ones that didn't speak to you. I know we have like 3 minutes. We're going to do a quick lightning round and see if you can capture a haiku, a limerick, 3 sentences, or a doodle that is your quick and simple response. And then we're going to do some quick shares all together. And I will keep my eye on the time, so we really do only have 3 minutes to do this. All right, great. We've also had some beautiful shares from the Zoom participants, and somebody who's listening in from Australia at 5 in the morning, so. All right, so your 2 minutes, or I know, keep going, you can keep writing, but I'd love to get like 1 share each table, so who's ready to share their lightning round? And we know that these are like imperfect because they're quick. Tom, you want to share? All right. Okay. We've got Tom first. Okay, great. Tom, bring it over.
I had just a brief comment on the communion with the divine. One thing when I first heard about Teilhard and started reading a bit back in the 1970s, I was doing graduate work in chemistry, and I found in doing the work in trying to understand how molecules are structured and how I can determine what the molecule I'm looking at actually is. I find it just amazing that all these very tiny things that you can sort of tickle it a bit with using it as an instrument, which gives a fingerprint of what it is and helps to identify it. So I found at the beginning that somehow we were able to have a finger touching that small molecule, and in that sense, divine, I felt.
Beautiful, thank you. Okay.
Hey there. Okay. Here's a few sentences for you.
Which one did you respond to?
The communion with the divine, communion with the earth. Divine earth, redundant to me, heretical to you, a reminder to us both, perhaps, of the impossible miracle that all of this continues to be.
I love that. Beautiful, thank you. All right, this table.
So for my reflection, I focused on what is my lived experience of separateness, and I am not a poet by any stretch of the imagination, but I just wrote the following. Amidst the appearance of separation, mountains and rivers are one, if only we can see.
Beautiful, thank you. All right, and our last table.
Sure. We talked about a lot of things, but I think something that summarizes what we all touched on is approaching divinity through practical, everyday experiences, particularly with nature. And I wrote a phrase down here: divinity in the infinities.
Oh,
So-
nice. I like that.
Yeah,
I
that's
like
very
that.
good, isn't it?
So thank you, everyone. I really appreciate it. I hope that this sparked some desire to keep questioning and exploring and writing and talking and having that creative impulse as part of your spiritual practice. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Amy. It's been great having you here with us today and trying to make Teilhard more practical to our spiritual sense. I don't think we need 2 microphones. Is this one on? Yeah, let me turn this off. And so I'm really appreciative of what you've done, and I think it looks like everybody was pretty well connected here. And I hope the same is true for the people on the Zoom. I'll be interested to read the chat when it's all over, too, to see what you were saying. But before we leave, I want to remind you that if you're not a member of the Teilhard Association and wish to join, you should pick up one of those flyers, or if you're at home, go to the membership page of our website. And yeah, it's not in the chat, I don't think, but if someone could put it there, that would be great. And then also next month, on October 26th, we're going to gather again. So at this time to learn how to do Qigong, a Chinese experience of mindfulness. And Rachel Katz is really an expert in this. She spent 25 years in China. So if you're interested in it, this is the place to go. So she'll teach us the art of the basics and comment on health benefits of the practice. And be sure to check our website, because we have a couple other events in the back of our minds, but they're not, formalized yet. So just keep watching. Or Facebook, we try to publish things on Facebook. We also have, as you saw, if you watched the PowerPoint at the beginning, several retreats by me. I'm doing 3 retreats, I think, coming up in the spring and the summer. And then we have several reading circles where we take Teilhard's work. Somebody's doing the human phenomenon. It's going to take them 2 years to get through. But we're going page by page. I'm working on the spiritual power of matter. And Sam and Paula Granaccia usually send out, snippets of things, and then they have their readings that way. So if you're interested in anything like that, I think it's the way we really are getting to the bottom of what Teilhard is talking about. Because as you were saying, Amy, it's kind of dense. It's hard to read the first time. You might have to read it 5 or 10 or 20 times. But we really, in our reading group at least, right, Joan? We really go word by word. and in the end, it's amazing. And then our website also contains a wealth of recordings by well-known speakers, Teilhardians, who have been our speakers in the past. And we also have a series of podcasts hosted by Andrew Del Rossi of people, again, well-known speakers, and their ideas on Teilhard. So most of what we do is really focused on Teilhard. And then I have the book that I just published, the proceedings from the October 2023 event in New York, which contains a bunch of essays one by Tracy, one by me, and one by, lots by other people, talking more or less about Teilhard's time in New York and his writing that Mass on the World. And so you can get that before we go. And I guess the last thing is, for those of you who are here, feel free to get some more desserts and just stay around and chat or do whatever. And most of all, come back again. That would be great to see you again, because it's been great to meet some of you who haven't been here before and see old friends. So I also want to thank Amy Edelstein for a truly inspiring session, and and all of you for attending, both online and here. So thank you very much. And safe home, those of you who are traveling.
Recording stopped.